Oh, oh, hello. Hey y'all, if you can hear me, this is Mrs. Munsell. Just type in the chat box and say hey. Hi, Rachel. Hi, Sammy. So far, y'all the only ones in so far. Can y'all see the screen, the biology lesson 15.1? Okay. Y'all may be the only one checking your email these days, so maybe a very quiet class today. You know what, guys? Why don't we just, you guys can hang around, whatever. I won't even do anything until, at the earliest, let's wait till noon. Let's see, that's only 3 minutes away. Let's say 12:10. Give everybody a chance to get the email and read and join as many as can. And I'll just start then, okay? You two are the only ones in here right now. Cool. Okay, guys, how are you? Good morning or now afternoon. Glad to see you guys. Some of you made it, figured out what's going on or whatever. It's been kind of crazy. Sorry about all that. It was setup was not quite how it was supposed to be. And so let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to show. Oh, here we go. There I am. Hi, guys. It's definitely me. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Anybody have any? If you can't hear me, well, that doesn't make sense. I guess just say hi, whoever can hear me. If you can hear me, say hi. Great, good, good. Okay. Still a lot of people missing, so I'm not sure if they've got found the link yet or figured out we're on. But I am going to go ahead and start so we can get as much done before anybody has to leave. Samuel, you're here. So you're here till 2, right? Is that? Here, let me unmute.
We're here till 1:30.
1:30. Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and get started. It's not a very long lecture, so I might be able to get it in. So, all right. Let me share my screen. Oops. Can you all see the biology 15.1 slide there? I might not be doing that right. Okay. Hang on a minute. I almost got it. There. Well, I can keep the video going. Yeah. Okay. All right. So moving on, and we're still in plants. Oh, I did want to make one comment on that last module about, I don't know if how many of you were here or remember listening, and we were talking about the different root systems of the dicot and the monocot. The difference when they listed the different things, it's that the dicot typically has a tap root as opposed to the fibrous type root. So no big deal on that. It just was a usual. Unfortunately, the example they use in the book was the opposite. The dicot plant or the woody plant had a fibrous system. So, but normally dicots, which are woody stems, have a taproot. But that was just from last week, so no big deal. So this week we're going to move into physiology of plants, which is, I think, a little more interesting. It's kind of how things work, right? Physiology just means basically what makes the things in a plant work, how the chemicals get around, how the water gets around, how, it makes its food. And it also includes reproduction, as it said in the book, but we're actually separating that out because it's a unique part of the physiology of a plant. So in a little more detail, we'll study it in a little more detail. So for plant physiology, water is essential for 4 of the processes that plants do, and probably really even more than that. I mean, they're involved in everything that the plant needs to live and reproduce. Does anybody know those 4? Anybody type a few in their chat box? Does everybody feel comfortable chatting in the box to me? I mean, I don't, that's fine with me. If you have questions or anything, you can chat in there. I might have to start calling you on y'all and get answers. So we got one of the big ones, obviously, that we think of first. Oh. Xander, you got knocked out? Nasa, sorry about that. Nasa, very good. Hydrolysis, excellent. Anybody else? That's actually a hard one to remember because it's like, we did study that a little bit, and we'll go over it again, but one of the main ones, what does a plant do? What do we think of as a plant doing? Rachel, good. Photosynthesis, everybody. We all know that. That's the main one that comes to mind, at least for me, when you're thinking of, very good, Bear. Turgor pressure, essential, right? And there's one more. So there's 4. You guys need to know these because this will be surely a test question. I'm sure to transport. Very good. Excellent. And comes to find out that that is actually the largest, what water does the most for is transport. So, all right. So real quick though, we'll go over each of these and then move on. So for photosynthesis, we're way back when, y'all remember we went through this in how chemical reactions occur. The formula shows right here. So we got right here, we have 6. This means we have 6 of these molecules. We have 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 molecules. Oh, hang on. Let me do my little pen. Can y'all see that pen? Can y'all see where I'm? Yeah. Okay. You should be able to see that. And 6 water molecules. So there's our water that we needed. And they make 1 glucose. So they make 1 glucose molecule and 6 oxygen molecules. That's what comes out of this reaction. So they use up carbon dioxide, they use up water, make glucose, and make oxygen. And it requires sunlight and chlorophyll to do that. And that is what that's the water that photosynthesis uses, is this 6 molecules, okay? The next other process is the Turgor pressure, which, again, another essential process. Remember, we were studying cells, and there was this thing called the central vacuole. And we talked about how, it can fill up or shrink depending on, whatever different stimuluses or different circumstances. Like if you don't put any water, if you don't give a plant enough water, it will shrink or shrivel up or wilt rather. And the wilting is because the central vacuole doesn't have any water in it, and so it's not making any turgor pressure. So they have a couple things here. They call it the Nastic movement and tropism. In reality, I don't know, the way this is written here, it's saying that tropism is related to turgor pressure, but honestly, I don't think that's correct. I think that according to the book, tropism is a different type of movement, and it's not related, or it's not controlled by turgor pressure so much. It's more controlled by hormones. So we'll study that in just a second. So I think this slide may not be 100% correct the way it's written. But nastic movement, this word right here, nastic movement, it is related to turgor pressure. So we have a certain kind of movement that is related to, it's not dependent on the direction of the stimulus, but it's a pre-programmed reaction to a stimulus. So it doesn't matter, like it was talking about, it doesn't matter where, you know, as long as the temperature somewhere around is, as long as the temperature changes, it doesn't matter which direction the temperature is changing from. That doesn't even make sense, I guess, but it's saying just in general, these things will happen. Like it depends, like if there's a certain amount of light, the turgor pressure will change and maybe open up the petals or close the petals, or if the temperature changes, it was saying that might change the turgor of the plants and make it open or close, which, so it's not, well, I think a good example of it, like it was talking about this plant on page 464. I don't know how many of you have ever seen those kind of plants, but I have, and they're really fun. I don't know if I've ever seen them in Texas. I remember when I was younger, up north, having these, it's called Mimosa pudica, and you just brush along the top and all the leaves they clap right together, just like, and it's a very odd thing. I had no idea that was why, but it's because of nastic movement. So now we know. Okay. But the other type of movement they talk about, tropism, occurs in relation to the direction of movement of, the direction of movement occurs in relation to the, the direction of the stimulus. So light, depending on what way the light is, or gravity, and again, we'll look at that in a minute. It's not dependent on turgor pressure, okay? So it's a different type of movement, and we'll look at that in just a second. Okay. So one of the other processes, so we did photosynthesis, turgor pressure. Now we're looking at hydrolysis, right? So hydrolysis is really simple. Hydro means water, lysis means cut. So this is where water is used to break down molecules that were stored already. So they're stored as polysaccharides. They're originally made by photosynthesis, makes a simple sugar, which is called a monosaccharide. But sometimes it has excess, so it stores it. But to store it efficiently, it binds all those together and makes a polysaccharide. But the polysaccharide, to be used, it has to be broken back down. So when it needs the food, the water breaks it back up into single monosaccharides to be used as food. So it needs water to do that. Okay, so then the last one is transportation, which is the most important. Water is used for this more than any of the other processes. Not only does it provide water to different parts of plants by using transport, it also brings nutrients and chemicals throughout. So glucose from the leaves down, and nutrients typically from the roots up, right? Okay, so that's the 4 processes in a nutshell. And we'll look at those more in detail here. Okay, so the first thing to understand about transport and is first it has to, for water, first has to get absorbed. And kind of interesting, I thought this was pretty interesting to know. I mean, I kind of know that there's good soil, bad soil, but it was interesting to find out what makes up good soil and why. I mean, again, have a basic little bit of an understanding, but I never really, this is a little more detailed and it's kind of neat to know. The whole thing is to, for a plant to get everything it needs a certain amount of pore spaces, which are just basically gaps in the soil created by the inorganic material and organic material, whatever's in there. And like it says there, it's depending on the contents of the soil, the pore sizes might be small or big, but you kind of want them to be sort of in between. You want them to be not too large that the water just goes right through it and the plant can't really absorb it fast enough, or it disappears too fast, basically. And you don't want it to be too compact or the pores to be too small, that it doesn't really hold water, or really it does hold water, but it doesn't hold the other things like oxygen. It just can't, it has to have oxygen in there to absorb. It has to have, I don't know, it just has to have more ability to, those roots to spread out and have access to more things that are in the pores, in between the gravel, sand, and clay and silt. So actually this is written, it should be, whoops, let me go back. So if you look at the sizes, this is actually the opposite. It should be gravel, sand, and this one should be, it should be silt and then clay. This clay is actually the smallest. I'm sure most of you guys, I know out here, North Texas, mostly clay soils, and they have a whole lot of problems. And they definitely, it was kind of interesting because it was talking about, you know, you think maybe they were more fertile if they had, you know, more stuff in them, but not really. It's, again, you need those pores to, so sand, a mixture of sand and silt is actually the most beneficial. Let's see, it said, yeah, 40% silt, 40% sand, and maybe some clay and maybe some gravel, you know, but, and then the rest organic. It seemed to say that it didn't need very much organic material, but I was thinking, seems like more organic material is typically better, but I don't know, at least they tell us that by composting, that's what we're doing, is adding a lot of organic matter. And typically those are very rich soils, but I guess it depends on the size of them and stuff like that. But anyway, the main components are sand and silt. Sand and silt make an optimal pore size. So that was kind of interesting. How I was saying too is if you just waterlog a plant and it can't actually get enough, it fills all the pores, it can't get enough oxygen, or, you know, different things like that. So okay, so water transport. So it needs pores in the soil, but it still has to absorb it into the roots and move it up to the rest of the plant. For water transport, it actually goes through, there's water that goes up through the xylem. And it's actually kind of interesting that they don't really get why. I mean, they do, but they don't. They think it's still considered a theory because they haven't been able to consistently, I guess, prove it, or there's some information when they study this that is not consistent with the theory. But in general, it's that cohesion of water I was thinking it was somewhat like when you get a siphon started. Once you start it, it kind of keeps going. Even it can even go uphill. But that's a little bit, that may be some cohesion tension, but I think that's also more possibly related or a little bit related to pressure changes. Because we know if we have a decreased pressure at the end of a tube, water is going to keep flowing that way. And as soon as you increase the pressure, it'll stop flowing. So I'm not sure. A little bit of it is cohesion, though, of water, where each individual molecule, each H2O is loosely kind of connected to the other H2O through a molecular attraction. So that's why, like they were saying, the water strider can ride on top of the water. Pretty cool. And it's not enough that Jesus could walk on water. So that's still a supernatural miracle. But it is enough that a water strider can walk on it. So that's the theory, is that the water, through the process of transpiration, is released out of the leaves at the top. And so water just keeps moving up and it's pulled along, and there's just enough cohesion that it can continue up. And then if the water stops being transpired, if the stomata that are close up, because it's like a dry period or there's no more photosynthesis going on, if it closes up, then obviously it doesn't transport up anymore. And that's actually really important to understand, because if the stomata have to open when photosynthesis is going on, remember this from last time, because it has to be able to take in CO2 for photosynthesis. And that's where that occurs. The CO2, it's taken in through the stomata, and but at the same time, some water is released. So if there is no photosynthesis happening to preserve water, they close the stomata because they don't need CO2. So at night, basically you'd expect the stomata to be closed. So y'all remember that definition, right? Transpiration, it's a specific type. It's just evaporation, but it's specifically to coming out of the inside of leaves, water coming out of the inside of leaves. Okay, so that's how water goes up, but there's also water that can go down and through in different directions through the phloem. The phloem is and I don't know that they don't understand exactly, or they were saying actually in this book, they said that it's a much more complicated subject, but it moves through phloem through, it's kind of guided. It's the phloem are living cells, and they actually have to expend energy to cause the water to move with organic substances. And just remember that the xylem are just dead cells. So it's just like a tube. They don't do anything to help the water move along. But the phloem cells are living cells, and they do expend energy. Okay, so that's water transport. Remember, with water transport, it's moving things around. So one of the things that it's moving around are hormones. So when they get to different places is through the phloem using water. So interesting enough that they're actually called hormones in plants, just like in humans, which typically that means if it's a hormone, it's a type of a protein. So all hormones are typically proteins that the body produces, or in this case, plants produce, which is really interesting. I didn't know they called them hormones in plants. But they're one of the kind of chemicals that, again, the phloem transports around using water. So they go where they need by using water. the first type, there's several types listed in here, and they do multiple things. One of the largest groups of hormones in plants were called auxins. And these are the ones that, well, they regulate development cells, as it says, altering amount they elongate. But it's primarily works in the stems of a plant, and it causes different kinds of tropism. This is what we were talking about before. The Turgor pressure causes nastic movement, but tropism is primarily, as far as I can understand, through this hormone auxin. So, and 3 of the types of tropism that they gave, and remember, it's just a movement. Tropism is a type of movement, and it's a type of movement in response to the direction of a stimulus, whereas the nastic is a type of movement independent of the direction of the stimulus. So for tropism, we have some that's responsive, grows in a response to light, like and it's called phototropism, makes sense. They have gravitropism, which is growth in response to gravity, meaning that it grows in the opposite, it grows against gravity. But that's a type of growth that's necessary, and it has to be, something has to drive that. And it's this hormone, auxin. And then the other one was thigmotropism, which is a growth response to touch. And it's not touching the plant and it closes. And that quick kind of closing like that has to be nastic, because it changes really quick. That's what's really neat about the Turgor pressure. It's like almost instantaneous, you know, how it works, that it can be, because water just goes in and out of that central vacuole, and that works. So, let's see. So let's look at some of the other, one of the other types of phototropism that they spoke about was the etiolation, which is extreme form. And we kind of tried to do that experiment, actually, I don't know when that was, a couple weeks ago, with the beans or whatever. And that was testing some genetics. But one thing we were doing was looking at etiolate, I can't even say that word, etiolation. I'm adding an extra syllable in there, I think, which is where the plant will grow all spindly and thin because it can't, because of the auxins in there, and it is basically trying to get, I guess, to light. But what happens is the auxins are actually destroyed because they aren't getting, no, opposite. They think that if it's in a dark area, the auxins are not destroyed. So in a light area, light actually destroys auxins, which make plants turn in the direction of light because they grow more on the other side. So if you think about it, if you have like a plant, if this is a plant and this is the sun, you have, I don't know if you guys, can you all see me? I don't know how many of y'all have video. Well, yeah, y'all can see me, right? That kind of sounds stupid, but does anybody not see me, I should say? If you can't see me, okay, Barry says you can see me. Okay, well, basically, if this is the sun and this is the light, the growth goes on the auxins are destroyed on this side, but not on the dark side. Sounds weird. So they grow on this opposite side, causing whatever to turn more towards the light. I didn't, that's not a very good representation, but just if you think about it, let's say if it's turned this way and, you know, the petals are here, it destroys the auxins on this side, and this grows more and it causes it to turn. You know, that's not a very good representation, but use your imagination. Sorry about that, guys. But that's what phototropism does, is it's a growth that occurs in response to light, and it will cause the plant to move, the plant that, like the leaves that are photosynthetic, to turn towards the light. And whereas gravitropism is in response to gravity, basically just grows the opposite of gravity. And I'm sure everybody's seen trees or plants or whatever that have fallen over. And so it'll fall over, and then wherever the end of the tree was, it'll start growing up as it tries to reach the light, you know. And even like plants that, let's say one plant's below another one, you see it'll grow. This is phototropism. It'll grow out to try to get out to the light. So it's really interesting that those are all controlled by hormones. And then same with the thigmotropism. It's like they were talking about vines, how or why they wrap around things, and it's because when they touch an object, again, the auxins grow more on the other side and they tend to curl around, which is really interesting. I thought that was pretty fascinating, that it's all controlled by hormones. So, but again, that's tropism, and that's controlling how a plant grows. Another hormone that, there were quite a few, so we'll just go through each of these, and they're primarily what they do. Gibberellins, odd name, I would say, for a plant hormone, but they promote elongation in stems, they affect mitosis rate, and they induce seeds to germinate. And then you have cytokinins, which also can affect mitosis rates and cellular differentiation. They actually promote or induce leaf cells to elongate, and they affect the synthesis of chlorophyll. And then a couple more is abscisic acid. So last time we talked about the abscission layer, and if y'all remember, that is the layer that is at the base of the stem of a leaf, or it's not the base of the stem of the leaf, yeah, base at the where the stem attaches to, where the leaf attaches to stem, and it's the layer that squeezes off the xylem and phloem so that the plant will die. So it's only in your, the leaf will die and fall off. So it's only in your abscission, right? Those are only in your deciduous, only in your deciduous plants that whose leaves fall off in the fall. But they also help control the leaf stomata, as far as opening and closing. I assume that's what that means. And then interesting was another hormone is ethylene. I don't know if you've ever heard of that one, but I had heard that it's used to ripen fruits, but I hadn't realized that it's actually a natural method. You know, it's sometimes you hear about farmers doing something or big, you know, because they can't pick some of these products if they're ripe and transport them, you know, halfway around the world. They will all be bruised and ruined, smushed, whatever. So they actually have to pick a lot before it's ripe, which I think that's of course why why homegrown is so much better, or you know, farmers market products are so much better because they can allow the fruit to ripen right there on the tree, and you know it. I think it, you know, makes it more flavorful and sweet. But regardless, this is actually really important to be able to do this other process because, you know, to provide food to everywhere all across the world, you know, how amazing is that we can even do that? But one of the ways we can do that is through using ethylene to do that. And it is natural. It is a natural product. So that's kind of cool to know. So it's used for ripening fruits, but it's also, it also is the thing that causes the abscission layer to close off. So it's interesting because the abscisic acid actually inhibits the abscission layer, keeps it from closing off. And the thing that actually caused the abscission layer to close off is the ethylene. So somehow there's an interaction between that. I think they're saying, or like the abscisic acid decreases in the shorter days, and I can't remember all the details of that, but in any way they work together to cause the leaves to fall off every year. The other one there called Florigen is sort of a mystery hormone that they don't really know what they actually haven't even officially named it. They don't even really know what it is. They haven't identified it, I should say. They know there's something that controls flowering of these anthocytes, but they don't know, they haven't identified the actual chemical. So although I think it was saying in the book that, and maybe they have by now, actually, I don't know, but 10 years ago they hadn't, I guess. Or actually 15 years ago, I guess, with this book, so it's a little old. Okay, so those are our hormones. So we got auxins, which is the main one, and we got some of the other ones that do some interesting, the gibberellins, the cytokinins, which actually the cytokinins is kind of an interesting one because that's also a word used in humans. Cytokinins are actually a mediator of inflammation in humans. So like when something hurts or you got infection or whatever, cytokinins will be released and cause inflammation. And so we take anti-cytokinins to counteract that often too. So I don't know where those come from. Maybe they come from plants. So I don't know. They might have anti-cytokines if they have cytokinins. So, okay. So this was interesting. The insectivorous plants. Has anybody ever seen one of these? I've never seen one. I don't know where they grow. They look like something that would grow, you know, like in the tropical forest or something. But actually, it's said that they grow in really poor soils. So that can't be the tropical forest. So I don't know where they grow. But seems interesting to me that they would grow at all, but they definitely, I think it would be kind of fun to try to raise one, but I don't know, might be hard. But these are ones that actually respond to a stimulus, but it doesn't matter, it's not the direction. They close in response to a stimulus, and that is nastic. So it doesn't matter where or what direction the fly is, it just touches and the plant closes. So it's turgor pressure. It's related to turgor pressure changing. But like they were saying, the fly is not the food. These plants still have to do photosynthesis. But since they grow in poor soils and they don't have a very, you know, I guess, good root system as a consequence that can absorb nutrients, they actually get their organic nutrients from flies, which is pretty cool. They don't wait for the fly to die and decay in the ground and absorb it through the root. They just eat it, you know, live. Or well, they kill it and then, yeah. So it's pretty funny. But I thought it was interesting because it said the plant won't actually grow nice big flowers like in this picture. Not that they're pretty, but they're flowers still. They won't grow those if you grow it in rich soil. So a stimulus for these flowers to become like this, become insect eating basically, is having poor nutrition in the soil. So one of those opposite everything else. Most things that grow better if you have good soil. So that one's kind of different. But remember, that's nastic. It's related nastic movement of a plant. Its stimulus is not dependent on the direction, and it's turgor pressure that causes it. Okay, so we're going to start a little bit on reproduction in plants, and most of it will be in the next section. But this is talking about what they call vegetative reproduction, which is actually really commonly used in commercial farming and gardening. It's a form of asexual reproduction, and these are all the ways that it can do it. Quite a few, and I'm sure you guys have all seen every one of these ways. Just didn't know that that's what that was. So now you know. Let's see. So they have plantlets, runners, buds from potatoes, stems, leaves, and graftings. So like little plantlets might be strawberries. Well, that's more like, I guess that's more like, here we go. Here's some good examples. The strawberries are more of a runner. Let's see, I don't remember all the examples they had in the book. They had some pretty good ones. Let's see, plantlets seem like a common, a lot of plants did that. Let's see one. I don't even have an example in there. So let's see. Runners, strawberries were considered runners. You got rhizomes that put out different, ginger plant puts out different pieces, and then they become a whole ginger plant in of itself. Buds from potatoes, you got suckers that grow off of, which are really can be kind of annoying in some plants, right? Sometimes that's not what we want. You can replant stems. So like in this one, right here in this one, wait, let's see. It's showing a picture of, you just stick the stem in the ground. And I don't know if any of y'all ivies, I have a house, I forget what they call them. They're just house ivies. And I've had them for 20 years and they always die and stuff, but you can take a cutting and put it in, or you can just do like that where you kind of fold it down and put part of the stem back touching the ground, and roots can grow out of it. So, and we all have done cuttings. I mean, rosemary is a good one. You just cut it and you can put it either in just some water to stimulate growth and then plant it, or you can just put it in soil, well moist soil. You have to have kind of some way to make sure it's getting enough water really early on, but they grow roots really, really fast. So I thought the onion was kind of interesting. I had another picture. Let's see if I can find it. No. Boy, hard for me to see sometimes these pictures. Nope, it's not that one. I had another picture I wanted to show you guys that showed this onion. Can you all see the onion there? Am I on the right screen? Am I sharing the right screen now? I don't know. But so this is all underneath the ground, right? And the stem, this is one of those specialized leaves they were talking about. That there are leaves, but they're under the ground and they're actually store some of the food. And then it has, of course, an onion has other leaves, right, that go above the ground. And those, green shoots you see, those are also leaves. And that's where your photosynthesis, of course, is occurring. That's why the green. And like they talk about, once that dies off, then pretty much, your onion's done growing, you better pick it. But it will grow new, you can grow new onions. In the inside here, you got these little buds that, this one is the main bud, but then you also have other buds that can make a whole nother onion. If you let it keep growing and growing and growing. So you have sort of like almost like a garlic plant. You have buds that will grow, but we usually, eat them before that. And again, I thought it was interesting because this picture showed this stem here. It's kind of an underground stem. So, oops. Let's see. Oh, it didn't work. I think we have a problem getting to my next screen. Sorry, I got out of the wrong screen. Here we go. Okay. So something important to understand is that vegetative reproduction has nothing to do with flowers, right? It has to do with stems, leaves. You can even replant some plants. You can actually grow a whole new plant just from a leaf, which is pretty cool. And if you think about it, remember how we were talking about meristematic tissue in plants. There's several different kinds of tissue, but the meristematic tissue is the kind of tissue that is mitosis, but it's like a stem cell. So it can differentiate into all kinds of things. So you have a leaf, you put the stem in the ground and you can grow roots. That's coming out of the meristematic tissue that whatever stimulus it's programmed, it says, oh, I need roots, and it starts growing roots, which is pretty cool. Actually, I didn't really get that far. Actually, I didn't actually get flowers. I stopped at vegetative reproduction. So I'll actually pick that up next time. But one of the other interesting things they were talking about in the vegetative reproduction was grafting, which that's obviously they use that in commercial as well. And one of the reasons is you use a healthy plant, but it doesn't have the greatest maybe flowers, or it doesn't have the greatest fruit. And you have this other one that, it's either dying out or whatever, but it bears this great fruit. So you just take this, whatever stems, and I don't really know exactly how they do it, but they take the good fruit stems, graft it into the, healthy root or tree with a healthy root and all, and they can get the same fruit they got from the original tree that they grafted from. So it just retains everything about the original tree, which I thought that was pretty fascinating. I actually kind of thought grafting was more of it would mix somehow, but it does not mix. It's just, the analogy was pretty cool how they used that. That's the way we're grafted into the root with Israel. We don't become Israel, but we're joined to it. And I thought that was really cool. What was I going to say? One thing to understand about vegetative is it doesn't matter remember in asexual reproduction, they're just producing clones. There's no change in the DNA or the genetic code. So the phenotype, which is the expression of the genes, right? The phenotype is the expression of the genotype, will be exactly the same. And that's advantageous for commercial growers because that's what they want. Um, they just want, they do want, they want the same type, and that's, you know, the disadvantage is you don't get the, sometimes you, unfortunately, propagate flaws too, and they're exactly the same. So, or like they were saying, some things with like potatoes, they're weaker, or they're not, they don't grow quite as big, and for whatever reason, I don't know. But maybe it just has to put more work or effort into the growth of the plant, because it has to, you know, develop a whole, you know, root system or leaf system or whatever, stem system. But it is important to understand the difference between, you know, the different types of reproduction. So next time we will talk about sexual reproduction, and that will create a new phenotype potentially. It definitely can create a new genotype where you have different genes in the offspring, and then depending on what you have, you might have different phenotypes. So we already had talked about reproduction in bryophytes and seedless vascular plants, where they have the generations that rotate. That's not the right word, but alternating generations. One generation is called the spore generation. The other generation is the gamete generation. And then conifers, we talked about, can produce sexually with pollen cones and seed cones. And then flowering plants we'll study next time through sexual reproduction. Okay, so pretty much that was it for today. And next week we'll look at the rest of this module. And we're almost there, guys, so just hang in. You guys are doing great. I know I can't imagine trying to get your stuff done when you're not really sure what you're supposed to do or how to do it. But just be persistent, and please ask me questions, email me. I try to respond timely, although I am having a little extra work as well in doing all this. Unfortunately, I was looking forward to being in quarantine and not having to do certain things, but it ends up I have to do more. So just works that way. I hope y'all are staying safe, and that everybody's dealing well with everything. And I'm trying to think. Oh, one thing is I will send out quiz keys to all the parent emails after class or sometime this evening. And then, so hopefully everybody got their quiz in by now mostly. And then all I'll need is the score back on that. You should have got 100. Those are open book, guys. So if anybody has any question about anything, you know, I'll give you a chance to correct it. But just send me an email. Oops, I didn't look that up. It should have been this answer. I'm okay with that. And as far as tests and everything, again, that's another thing. If you want to correct any of the work, if your parents grade the test and you had any that you got wrong, we'll give you half credit, and just send that in. Have your parents send in how much points are added because you corrected it. Okay. We'll get through this. Oh, the leaf project, guys, don't forget, that's also going to be, I think that's next week. That's due. If you did it like for real and you were able to find leaves, which I think it's really cool, because I wish I had time to go out and look at a bunch of leaves and figure out what they were, because it's kind of interesting. But if you actually did that and, you know, put leaves on paper, you can take pictures of it and turn it in that way. If you, otherwise you can just do it online and, you know, put the pictures on, you know, on in Microsoft Word or whatever, and, you know, put whatever the information is underneath each one that you're supposed to. You can put like 4 on one page or something. And like I said, if you do extra, so it's 20 that you're supposed to do. And if you guys do extra, you get extra, a little bit extra for each one, you know, for how many ever you do. So feel free to go to town. I'd kind of like to make that one not optional. Sorry, Bear, I just see that. Yeah, we kind of did. I guess that one kind of did start after everything. I was gonna make everything optional. Okay, I guess I will. I know you guys got a lot on your plate, so I'll still make it optional. I'd love to see y'all do it, but I understand. I'm not gonna. I know you get more out of it if you guys do it. So. Let's see, what else? Anybody have any other questions? Anything at all? Not about anything that's due or, all right. Well, y'all have a good week, and we will try again next week. There will be a new link. And it'll definitely be next week right time, because now they actually did have to set up a whole new account to make this work at the same time, but we're thankful that it worked. So y'all take care, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, quarterly test. Rachel, what's that about quarterly test?
Oh.
Send that out, or did you guys not?
Don't stand behind me while I'm eating. I hate that.
Did everybody get that? The quarterly test, or? You did? So, Rachel, what about it? I'm not sure. What did I miss something? Some of y'all might not have been here. Oh, you know what? I'm not, the quarterly test, did you take the one, was it the one that I handed out in class? Because your mom and dad nobody has the key for that. So I think you're gonna have to try to, oh, okay. Okay, Rachel, maybe you weren't there. If you could just take the quarterly test if you have it in the solutions book. If anybody has a quarterly test, I guess we haven't turned those in. I don't know what I was thinking. But you will need to turn those in, because or I guess, let me think about this, because I'm not 100% sure what to do. If I should send your parents the key or have you guys send the test. I'm going to talk to our assistants and see which one would work better for everybody. Because it is really hard to keep up with. I find it really hard anyway to keep up with paper, any kind of work, whether it's graded or not graded or whatever. It's hard to keep up with it online. So I'll get back with you, and I'll probably have another email. So sorry about all the emails, but things keep changing. But that's why I say, don't worry, ask questions if you're not sure. And no, I'm not sure, Nasa. That's why I'm not 100% sure which we should do. If we should send the whole test, or I would send your parents the key for them to grade. So I'll figure it out, and I'll do a follow-up email, hopefully later tonight. Okay, y'all? Take care. Have a good week.
Thank you. You too.
All right. No, I can't. let's see. Here.